Privet Drive was the picture of suburban tranquility. Neat lawns stretched between houses, each with its own story. At number 10, Mrs. Helen Robinson tended her roses. Her neighbor at number 12, Mr. Jim Thompson, preferred his tomatoes. They were as different as their gardens, separated by a white picket fence and years of unspoken grievances. Their interactions were limited to curt nods and the occasional grumble about noise or leaves. It had not always been this way. They had once exchanged pleasantries, even cups of sugar. But time, as it often does, had woven a tapestry of misunderstandings and perceived slights. A misplaced garbage can, a barking dog, a carelessly spoken word. These had become the bricks in the wall that divided them. Each brick laid with a silent resentment, hardening their hearts against each other. Helen, a widow of 5 years, found solace in her garden. It was an explosion of color, a testament to her love for all things bright and beautiful. She had a gift, everyone said so. Give her a dry twig and she could coax life from it. Jim, a man of routine and solitude, found comfort in order. His vegetable patch was his pride, every row meticulously planned, every weed banished with ruthless efficiency. He preferred function over frippery, practicality over pointless beauty. Their gardening styles mirrored their personalities. Helen, impulsive and generous, treated her plants with an almost maternal affection. Jim, practical and reserved, approached his garden with a military precision. He saw Helen's methods as haphazard, her exuberance as frivolous. She, in turn, found his rigidity stifling, his silence cold. The fence between them seemed to symbolize their differences, a stark white barrier separating her chaotic beauty from his regimented order. Summer arrived, a blazing inferno that scorched the earth. The sun hung high in the sky, an unrelenting ball of fire, casting its searing rays upon the land. The heat waves shimmered, distorting the horizon, making the air itself seem to waver under the oppressive heat. The skies, usually a benevolent blue, turned a hazy, oppressive gray. The once clear and inviting expanse now felt like a heavy, suffocating blanket, trapping the heat and making the air thick and stifling. The clouds, though present, offered no respite, only adding to the sense of impending doom. Rain became a distant memory, a cruel joke whispered by the wind. The once lush fields now lay barren. The grass turned to brittle straw, and the trees swayed listlessly, their leaves rustling like dry paper. The wind, instead of bringing cool relief, carried with it the scent of dust and desolation. The earth cracked, thirsty and parched. Deep fissures formed in the soil, a testament to the relentless drought. The ground, once soft and fertile, now resembled a broken mosaic, each crack a silent cry for water. Helen's once vibrant garden began to wilt, the colors dimming, the leaves drooping like the shoulders of a weary child. The flowers, which had once stood tall and proud, now bowed their heads in defeat, their petals curling and browning at the edges. She watered religiously, but the earth was too dry, the sun too harsh. Each drop of water seemed to vanish almost instantly, swallowed by the thirsty ground. Despite her best efforts, the garden remained a shadow of its former self, a constant reminder of the unforgiving summer. She watched, her heart aching, as her beloved flowers struggled for survival. Every morning, she would walk through the garden, her steps slow and heavy, her eyes scanning for any sign of life. But each day, the sight that greeted her was one of despair. Across the fence, Jim's vegetable patch thrived. The contrast was stark and painful. While her garden withered, his flourished, the plants standing tall and green, their leaves vibrant and full of life. He had rigged up an intricate irrigation system, a network of pipes and sprinklers that delivered water with measured precision. Each plant received just the right amount of moisture, ensuring their continued growth and health. The system was a marvel of efficiency, a testament to Jim's ingenuity and dedication. Helen watched, a bitter envy twisting in her gut. She couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy every time she glanced over the fence. The sight of Jim's thriving garden was a constant reminder of her own failure, a source of endless frustration and sorrow. She knew she could ask for help, but pride held her back. The thought of approaching Jim, of admitting her struggles, was almost unbearable. She had always prided herself on her independence, on her ability to manage on her own. Asking for help felt like admitting defeat. Asking Jim for anything, especially after years of barely speaking, felt like swallowing a stone. Their relationship had always been strained, marked by a series of misunderstandings and unspoken grievances. The idea of reaching out to him now, of bridging that gap, seemed impossible. She'd rather see her flowers perish, she told herself, than give him the satisfaction of needing his help. Her stubbornness was both her strength and her weakness, a double-edged sword that cut deep. As the days passed and the heat continued to rise, she clung to her resolve, even as her garden withered away. One particularly scorching afternoon, as Helen was tending to her wilting roses, she could feel the relentless sun beating down on her back. The heat was oppressive, and the air felt thick and heavy, making every movement a chore. She had been working tirelessly for hours, trying to save her beloved garden from the merciless weather. As she wiped the sweat from her brow, she noticed Jim watching her from his side of the fence. He had always been a distant figure, someone she rarely interacted with despite living next door for years. His face, usually etched with a serious expression, seemed softer, his eyes holding a hint of concern. It was a look she had never seen on him before, and it caught her off guard.
"Terrible weather for roses, isn't it?" he remarked, breaking the silence that had always existed between them.
He said, his voice surprisingly gentle. It was a stark contrast to the gruff tone she was accustomed to hearing from him during their rare exchanges. Helen, taken aback by his unexpected observation, simply nodded, her throat suddenly dry. She had never imagined Jim would take an interest in her garden, let alone express concern for it. She waited for him to retreat back into his usual silence, but he surprised her again. Instead of turning away, he lingered, as if he had more to say.
"I've got more than enough water pressure," he continued, gesturing towards his garden hose. "Could spare some for those roses of yours?" His offer was genuine, and it took Helen a moment to process it. Shame to see them go to waste. His words were simple, but they carried a weight of sincerity that Helen couldn't ignore.
The words hung in the air between them, a lifeline tossed across a chasm of years of unspoken resentment. It was as if, in that moment, the barrier that had always existed between them began to crumble. Helen stared at him, her heart a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. She had always thought of Jim as a grumpy old man, but now she saw a different side of him. For a moment, pride threatened to choke the words in her throat. She had always prided herself on being self-sufficient, never needing help from anyone, especially not from Jim. But the sight of her dying roses and the unexpected kindness in Jim's eyes shattered her resolve. She realized that accepting his help didn't mean she was weak. It meant she was human. With a small, grateful smile, she finally found her voice. "Thank you, Jim. I'd appreciate that." The words felt foreign on her tongue, but they also felt right. Jim nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. Together they worked side by side, watering the roses and tending to the garden. It was a simple act, but it marked the beginning of a new chapter in their relationship. Over the next few weeks, the roses began to bloom again, their vibrant colors a testament to the power of kindness and cooperation. Helen and Jim's newfound friendship blossomed alongside the flowers, proving that even the smallest seed of kindness can grow into something beautiful. They found themselves sharing more than just gardening tips. They shared stories, laughter, and a sense of community that had been missing for so long. The garden became a symbol of their growing bond, a place where they could come together and find solace in each other's company. As the sun set over the garden, casting a warm golden glow over the roses, Helen realized that sometimes all it takes is a small act of kindness to bridge the gap between two hearts. And in that moment, she felt a sense of peace and contentment she hadn't felt in years. The garden, once a place of solitude and struggle, had become a sanctuary of friendship and hope. And it all started with a simple offer of water on a scorching afternoon.
That's very kind of you, Jim. I can't thank you enough for your help. I'd appreciate that very much. It's been so hard to keep up with everything lately.
And so began their unlikely partnership. What started as a simple act of kindness soon blossomed into something much more meaningful. Every other day, Jim would connect a hose to his system and run it under the fence to Helen's side. It was a small gesture, but it made a world of difference. They would stand, one on each side of the white picket fence, and chat, while the water breathed life back into Helen's thirsty plants. The fence, once a barrier, now served as a bridge. At first, their conversations were hesitant, filled with awkward pauses and polite inquiries about the weather. They were two people from different worlds trying to find common ground. But gradually, as the days turned into weeks, the words came easier. They began to share more about their lives, their hopes, and their dreams. They discovered a shared love for gardening, albeit expressed in different ways. Jim loved the structure and order of a well-planned garden, while Helen enjoyed the wild, untamed beauty of nature. They swapped stories, tips, and even the occasional cutting. Jim would give Helen advice on how to prune her roses, and Helen would share her secret recipe for compost. The fence, once a symbol of their division, now felt like a meeting point, a place where they could connect. It was no longer just a boundary, it was a place of exchange and growth. As they worked side by side, tending to their respective domains, a subtle shift occurred. They began to see each other not just as neighbors, but as friends. The grudges they had held onto for so long began to feel trivial, dwarfed by the simple act of sharing and caring. They realized that they had more in common than they had ever imagined. The fence, no longer an impenetrable barrier, became a permeable membrane, allowing kindness and understanding to seep through. It was a testament to the power of human connection and the beauty of simple acts of kindness. Over time, their conversations grew deeper. They shared memories of their younger days, talked about their families, and even discussed their fears and regrets. The garden became a sanctuary, a place where they could be themselves without judgment. Jim and Helen found solace in their routine. The act of watering the plants became a ritual, a moment of peace in their otherwise busy lives. It was a time to reflect, to connect, and to heal. As the seasons changed, so did their garden. What started as a few wilted plants soon turned into a vibrant, thriving oasis. It was a testament to their hard work, their dedication, and their growing friendship. They celebrated their successes together, sharing the fruits of their labor. The garden was no longer just a collection of plants. It was a symbol of their journey, their growth, and their bond. Looking back, Jim and Helen realized that their garden was more than just a hobby. It was a reflection of their friendship, a testament to the power of kindness, and a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures can have the biggest impact. As they walked away from the garden side by side, they knew that they had created something special. Their garden was a lasting legacy, a symbol of their friendship, and a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can grow into something beautiful.